Few minutes, fine. You're muted.
As soon as strikes 8, Maharaj will start. You got few
1
seconds
minute,
left.
few seconds. Okay.
Yes, Maharaj. Yes, Maharaj, we can start now. Abhishek?
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Maharaj. So
Hare
welcome
Krishna.
everyone. It's 8 o'clock, so we'll go ahead and get started. We're fortunate enough to be joined by His Holiness Giridhari Swami. Maharaj is also going to chant for us this evening. So, Maharaj, without further ado, the floor is yours.
All right. Thank you. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janaballabha Girirvardhari Jaya Gopi Janaballabha Girirvardhari Jashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Jashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Jamunatira Vanachari Jamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Janaballabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Janaballabha Girivardhari Jashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Jashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Jamunatira Vanachari Jamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Gauranitai Jaya Gauranitai Jaya Gauranitai Jaya Gauranitai Jai Radhe Sham Jaya Radhe Sham Jaya Radhe Sham Jaya Radhe Sham Jaya Radhe Jaya Shri Radhe Jaya Radhe Jaya Shri Radhe Haribo Nitai Gaur Haribo Nitai Gaur Haribo Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Shri Gaur Nitai Ki Jai Shri Radha Shama Sundar Ki Jai Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Nitai Go Premanandi Hari Bo. Hare Krishna. Can you all hear me well? Yeah? Okay.
Yes, Maharaj, we can hear you.
Good. Thank you for turning on your video cameras, at least most of you. We have 19 attendees. So I would humbly request those who have not turned on your video cams yet, please do so. So at least we can see who we're speaking to and not just some little rectangular boxes there with names. If you would be so kind. So a few days ago, I sent a message to Nitai Gaur Sundar Prabhu, and I asked him if it would be okay for me to speak about Kaliya from the 10th canto of the Bhagavatam, and he said yes. He thought that would be good. And the reason that this came to mind was I was recently listening to a lecture that Prabhupada was giving, and this was in Fiji. And at this point, he had just kind of recruited some quite prominent persons there. They were leaders of the Indian community, big business people. And he was speaking about his vision of Kaliya Krishna, or Krishna Kaliya, deities and the temple and all of that. But interestingly enough, in the course of that conversation, or that lecture, he mentioned that it is compulsory to hear Krishna Katha. I thought that was quite interesting. He said it was compulsory. And he said if you do not listen to Krishna Katha, if you do not hear Krishna Katha, then he said you will continue your sojourn in the material world, this is paraphrased, and repeated birth, death, old age, and disease. So he said if you want to get free from that, then you have to regularly hear Krishna Katha. So kind of connecting what Prabhupada said there, the fact that he was in Fiji, he was speaking about Kaliya, then it made me think of the beautiful pastime in the 10th canto of the Bhagavatam. So as I speak about this, I would like you to kind of make at least some mental notes, if not some written ones. And after I speak what I'm going to speak, I would ask you to share some reflections. You know, besides just very sweet pastimes, all of the pastimes are quite instructive. And I will try to see how we can extract some points in ways that we can improve our own practice of Krishna consciousness. I always try to relate what is going on in the pastime, what's being spoken by Krishna, and see how that can also improve, my own practice of Krishna consciousness. So I would request that. So, according to the Bhagavatam and also the Krishna book, this story kind of begins in a place called Ramanaka, the Ramanaka Islands. And there were a race of serpents, it said. And they were fearful of being devoured by Garuda Dev. Garuda used to come there. The commentaries are given that that's, fish and serpents are the natural foodstuff of birds. And so Garuda was certainly justified in taking those foodstuffs. So to appease him, they got together, and instead of just randomly being picked off one after the other, they voluntarily decided that they would make an offering so that Garuda would be pleased and they would be protected. And so this was going on for some time. But one of these serpents, particularly envious serpent, by the name of Kaliya, couldn't bear that Garuda would be offered this offering. So instead of Garuda getting it himself, he chose to take it. He took that offering. And this very much angered Garuda Dev. And so Garuda Dev comes, and it's quite a scene. They faced off. Kaliya was no small-time serpent. It is said that he had 1,000 heads, and of those 1,000 heads, 101 of those heads were the most prominent. Keep that number in mind, 101, because later on we'll see that it plays a very important part in the pastime. So he's moving with great speed, and he attacks Garuda Dev. He's able to actually get close enough to bite him. Garuda Dev, with his left wing, he strikes him with such force that he drives him off Ramanaka Island, and he has to flee for his life. And where can he go? Well, only a place that he knows that Garudadev cannot go. Because sometime earlier, in a lake adjacent to the Jamuna, Garudadev went fishing. And he was looking for his dinner, perhaps his lunch, it doesn't really say, whatever it was. He was looking for a meal, whether it's breakfast, lunch, or dinner. That's not so important. But he was looking for something. And he dove within that lake, and of course he saw many fish. And he thought it was quite fine. He took a fish. But then there was this Muni there. You know that these Munis, they have these abilities to meditate even under the water. Now, why under the water? There's no place to get peace in this world. You go to a mountaintop and the 747 flies over, or people are going hiking. I mean, where do you get peace? So this Subari Muni, the only place he could find was under the water of this lake adjacent to the Jamuna. So he was meditating there, and naturally, all of his associates were fish, and he became very much inclined towards them. He had great affection for them, and so he was very protective. So when one of these fish was picked off by Garuda, he warned Garuda, that he cursed him, that if you ever come back here again, then you will have to give up your life. You will die. Of course, Subari Muni later had to pay for this curse. The problem with these curses, they often come back on you if you don't have the spiritual prowess, and it's not offered with good intention, because we see sometimes Narada Muni, for example, cursing others like this, like Nalakovera Mani Griva, for example, but it was for their betterment. In this case, Subari Muni cursing a superior, someone so exalted as Garuda, constituted an offense. And so he had to pay for that later on. But that's another story. Perhaps we can go into another time. So Kaliya, knowing this, he fled to that lake and he set up camp. And because he had all of those 1,000 hoods, all emanating very powerful poison, the whole area was permeated with these poison vapors. And it was said that if a bird flew overhead, for example, flew over this lake, which, by the way, was said to be 8 miles across in certain places, it was quite huge. When the bird flew over, those vapors would be enough to kill it, and it would just fall right down into the lake. So no birds could fly over. In fact, there was so much poison, these little poison droplets were carried by the wind, so anything within a certain radius of that lake, vegetation could not grow, no living entities could come. And of course, this was presenting a huge problem for the inhabitants of Braj, of Vrindavan. It is said that Kaliya had many associates, and they also were setting up. They also set up in the periphery like this. And so the combination of all that poison was really very devastating. Now, because Krishna's mission is to come and to, of course, he reestablishes the principles of religion, but he's also Paritanaya Sadhanam Vinashaya Duskritam. He comes to annihilate the demons, and he comes to protect the devotees. He couldn't bear that the Brajbasis could not go to this lake as they had done for so long. And therefore, he set out one fine day to set things right. On this particular day, he was on his own. Balaram did not come with him. And he marched right to that lake adjacent to the river Jamuna. And of course, it is said, I was just reading this, that because the poison vapor was permeating the whole area, that all the trees had also been killed, except for one Kadamba tree, apparently. One Kadamba tree. Now, there's different reasons. One Acharya says that when Krishna touched it, it again became, it again regained its life. Another says that Garuda apparently left some nectar there, so that tree was not destroyed. At any rate, there was this one Kadamba tree, and Krishna scaled that tree very quickly, and there was a branch that was kind of extending over the lake, and so he prepares for a battle, and first thing he does, he tightens his dhoti, his saffron or yellowish dhoti, golden dhoti. He tightens it very tight, like a wrestler getting ready. He takes his locks of hair and ties them back. And the last thing he does, which I thought was quite interesting, he slaps his arms 3 times, getting ready. You know, he's priming himself. He's getting all jacked up, ready to go to battle, right? So he's there, and he dives in from that Kadamba tree into the water of this lake. And it is said that when he hits the water, because he's Krishna, the water, it splashes out beyond the periphery of a lake, the shore of a lake. It says 100 bow lengths. 100 bow lengths. Now, it doesn't say how big the bow is. I mean, there's some pretty big bows that are mentioned in Scripture, like Lord Shiva's huge bow, those kind of things. It doesn't say how big the bow was. Another place I saw in the Krishna book probably says 100 yards. So, anyway, quite a distance. Now, not only that, but when Krishna is in the water, he splashes, he kind of whirls around from side to side like that. And as he does so, he makes musical sounds, which I thought was quite interesting. He makes musical sounds. We can splash around in the water. Other living beings can splash around in the water, but I don't think we'll hear any musical sounds. That's the difference between us and Krishna, that he can simply, use his arms, swirl around a little bit, splash in the water, and he makes very beautiful musical sounds. So this created quite a commotion, and that commotion attracted the attention of Kaliya. He very quickly came swimming up, and, he was quite upset, quite angry, because this was his turf, this was his territory. How dare someone should intrude like that? And he studied Krishna for just a few moments, and he couldn't help but appreciate, on one level, that Krishna was extraordinarily beautiful. I mean, there he was, with beautiful locks of black hair, lotus petal eyes, extending almost to his ears like that. His teeth like rows of pearls, ruby colored lips, had a tuft of yellowish white hair on his chest, the Srivatsa, Kaustubha gem, and all of those things. And he was amazed. But even though there was some initial attraction, his envious nature did him in. So on one hand, he could appreciate, but on the other hand, that envious nature was so strong that it drove him to actually bite Krishna on the chest. And not only that, then he encoiled Krishna, because he was a huge serpent, so he encoiled him. He was holding him quite tightly. Now, when all of this was happening, there were inauspicious omens. It is said that there were tremors of the earth. There were meteors kind of streaking across the sky. Persons' bodies were quivering. Their left eye was quivering. And so these are considered all inauspicious signs. Interesting point. In Kali Yuga, we're seeing more of these natural kind of occurrences than in the past, certainly. So inauspiciousness, and when Nanda Maharaj was reading all of these signs, he concluded something had happened to Krishna. How could this inauspiciousness take place? It had never happened before like this. And so they immediately got together and they wanted to find Krishna. Now, where could they find him? They used quite an accurate map. The accurate map was made by the impressions of Krishna's lotus feet, because he has some very unique markings, as you know. Amongst them, the lotus, the elephant goad, the conch, and so on. And so when Krishna would make those impressions in the soft sands of Braj, they were like deities, or like it's described, valuable treasures. You might ask, but there were so many other animals there, there were so many other people there walking all around. Wouldn't they have been obliterated, or by others? No, because everyone knew that those were Krishna's lotus footprints, and no one would dare walk over them, what to speak of walk on them and to obliterate them. So very accurate, very accurate. So they just followed those lotus footprints, and when they got near to the shore of this lake adjacent to the Jamuna, they saw Krishna. Now, of course, some of the cowherd boys had accompanied Krishna. They had fainted when this had happened. There were some cowherd men in the vicinity. They were there. They had also fainted when Krishna, everything was caught within the coils of Garuda. The calves, some cows were there. They were just transfixed, just looking at Krishna. And some were crying. They couldn't do anything, but they were just crying. Some could not cry. They were so stunned. So this is the scene that Nanda Maharaj, Mother Yashoda, and all the Brajbasis came upon, that their everything was there. Krishna, their everything was now encoiled within Garuda's tail, so to speak, his coils. And they were beside themselves. They didn't know what to do. Some started even go in. Balaram checked them, because those waters are very poisonous. Balaram checked them in various ways. Mother Yashoda also tried to go in. They had checked her. And so everyone was transfixed. I was looking this morning, and Prabhupada said, for 2 hours. He said for 2 hours this was going on. And that's quite a long time for them to just be there and to watch for 2 hours. It must have been excruciating. So why was this all going on? It was to increase the affection that the Brajbasis have, increase the affection, so that they would feel such intense love for Krishna. At some point, when Krishna felt that they were in such acute distress, then he expanded his body. He can make himself larger than largest or smaller than the smallest. And so he just expanded his body. Kaliya could no longer contain him, and so he was able to get free. Kaliya then faces off with him, and he's moving around with all those heads, studying him and seeing if there was some way he could possibly bite him or capture him again. But Krishna was so quick that he circled around him. And then Kaliya tries to chase him, and they go round and round and round and round until Kaliya gets quite exhausted. Who can catch Krishna? Even the yogis at the speed of the mind cannot catch Krishna, what to speak of Kaliya. So at some point, Krishna then takes the opportunity to jump on the heads of Kaliya. And in one place it says that Krishna actually grabbed the head and forced it down. And it said that, you know, if we choose not to surrender to Krishna voluntarily, then, you know, we may have a few knocks. We might get knocked around, you know, through the Lord or through an agent of the Lord. Get knocked around a bit, you know, that we have to, if we don't voluntarily bow our heads, then we may have to get a little bit of assistance. So, Krishna assisted him. He forced the head down, he jumped on, and then he did something very wonderful. He started to dance. I mean, even in the midst of all of that, Krishna's having a beautiful pastime. So he begins to dance. Now, you remember we said there's 101 heads. So you can imagine all of those 101 heads, they're all moving up and down, and up and so Krishna is then dancing on a platform like this that's constantly moving. I mean, even the best of dancers, even if there's a stable platform, you know, to dance very, you know, wonderfully, is already a tremendous feat. What to speak if you're trying to dance on a platform that's moving like this? But Krishna was so expert in his dancing. It is said that the jewels that were on the heads of Kaliya, they reddened Krishna's lotus feet. So they became kind of a copper color, and as he was dancing and dancing and dancing. So of course his dancing had different purposes. One was he was having a good time. He was enjoying himself. But another thing that was going on is he was kind of kicking those heads down. Every time a head would again come back up, he would kick it down, and this went on for some time. And in so doing, Kaliya was worn out. He was gradually being beaten. He vomited, it is said. He vomited poison. It said at one point the poison actually emanated from his eyes as well. He was vomiting all of this. This is all the impurities coming out. And after all those impurities came out, then he started to vomit blood. And so everything was coming out, all the anartas and the impurities and the offenses and everything for perhaps many lifetimes. Now, at some point, he was just practically knocked unconscious. And his wives and Nagapatnis who were on the shore, they were looking, and they saw that his consciousness had transformed. Something in his eyes, something in his facial expressions indicated to them that he had transformed in consciousness. Because they had always preached to him. They preached to him. They said, you have to surrender to Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He wouldn't listen. But now he was remembering what they said. And then it finally dawned on him that this is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And I will never be able to defeat him. And in fact, I need to surrender to him. Finally, he got that realization. So by the good preaching of his wives, he was able to come to that realization. But then he was unconscious, semi-conscious, unconscious like that. And then the Nagapatni, seeing that transformation had taken place, began to pray to Krishna, to appeal to Krishna on behalf of Kaliya. And that could be a whole other class in itself. Very beautiful prayers were offered by the Nagapatnis. And in so doing, Krishna then forgave Kaliya. It's very important to have others pray for us, be they family members or friends, associates like that. Tremendously beneficial, very powerful to have others pray for us. Because the Lord hears the prayers of his sincere devotees. So then Krishna forgave Kaliya. He jumped off those hoods, and then he was standing as a, emphasized, as still a very, very small cowherd boy, and he forgives him. By this time, he's beginning to come to consciousness again. You know, his heads are reeling. He's coming back. And then he realizes the great offense he had committed, and he begins to offer prayers and ask for forgiveness. And the Lord forgives him because of the prayers offered by the Nagapatnis. But Krishna says that you should leave here. You leave, you take all your wives, you take all your associates, and you leave, and you go back from the place you've come. You do not have to worry. Garuda will certainly not harm you because the marks of my lotus feet are on your heads, and so he will not bother you. You'll be safe, but never come back here again, and like that. For many different gifts to Krishna. In the course of that tussle, the Kaustubha gem fell from Krishna's neck into the lake, and then it was retrieved by them, and they offered it back. It was an interesting kind of thing that Krishna did there. And they offered him jewels, they'd offer him garlands, they offered him many nice offerings like this. And then they leave. They leave and they go back to Ramanaka Island like this. And Krishna is then reunited with the Brajbasis, and he takes, great pleasure in having these kind of like a reunion with them, and then takes even greater pleasure in now eradicating, the poisonous effects of Kaliya and his associates, and now that this lake adjacent to the Jamuna has been restored to its pristine state. And now, the Brajabasis can be nicely serviced once again. So many things have happened here. And at this point, I think I would ask some of you to share any reflections. Think about different things that happened in the past time, and how they might apply to your own practice of Krishna consciousness. You can either type it or you can unmute and speak.
So Maharaj, enviousness is the biggest stumbling block, at least for me, and this is not easy. The enviousness causes that. Other day I was listening to Niranjan Maharaj, 3 major regions: Pratishtha, Kutiniti, and Jiva Hinsa. They all emanate from this enviousness, Maharaj. So it is very hard. It is. I heard this last night, and I could not maintain it for 10 hours. So it is very, very, very difficult. Is there any other remedy than listening to Krishna's pastime?
Well, of course, our sincere chanting of Krishna's holy name. I mean, if we're chanting the holy name without offense and attentively, then it's purging the heart, of these anartas, of which envy is one of the big 6. But it has to be offenseless. It has to be very attentive. It has to be prayerful. It has to be a priority. The whole thing about chanting is that I believe sometimes it becomes just an add-on to other things that we do. We know there are 9 processes of devotional service, as explained by Prahlad Maharaj. And, sometimes chanting can just be one amongst them, not necessarily any more important than the rest. But there's many verses and Prabhupada has said as much, that chanting is the most important of all the processes. And Jiva Goswami says in one place, and Prabhupada paraphrases him, that yes, there are 9 processes of devotional service, but the chanting of Krishna's name should accompany the other angas. So he makes that distinction. And it's not like other angas have to accompany chanting Hare Krishna. The chanting of Krishna's holy name can stand on its own. And so it really has to become a priority. It has to become a priority. And it's something that should be improving as each day goes by. I mean, so many devotees have given, seminars on this, books have been written, but it really has to become a priority. There has to be a time in our devotional lives that we say, I'm going to be really, really serious about this, and I'm going to improve. I'm going to remove, the obstacles, whatever they might be. So, I mean, that is the medicine. Hari Nam, sincere chanting of Krishna's holy name. So, chanting the holy name, hearing Krishna Katha, of course, engaging in devotional service, Panchankam Bhakti, worshipping the deity, hearing the Bhagavatam, chanting Hare Krishna, worshipping the pure devotee, creating an atmosphere, a spiritual atmosphere that's conducive to the whole process. But we have to really work on it. We have to work on it. I think first thing is we have to acknowledge it's there. Sometimes it can be somewhat in denial about it. Develop the pure devotee disease. That I've been a devotee for X amount of time, and I punched the clock, and I put in the hours here. I've got the seniority, I have the position, but we may not have done the work. Prabhupada said, I gave you the process, but you have to do the work. So it's something that we really have to focus on. So I think the first step is to at least acknowledge it's there, that we have it, and we need to do something about it. And we have to pray to Krishna and appeal to him in all different ways with sincerity. Prabhupada said in one place, that we have to be both sincere and serious. Couple the two things together, sincere and serious. So like this. But it's deep-rooted, it's no doubt. It's deep-rooted. And what do we expect, why was that term kind of given of nitya baddha, right? Eternally conditioned. What does that mean? It means thousands, millions of lifetimes perhaps. It's been a long time. We've chose to associate with material nature. We've chosen to associate with the lower modes of material nature, Tamagun and Rajagun. So it takes time. But nothing less than sincere effort is going to purge the heart of these unwanted things, At some point, we've just got to make that decision. We've got to have that resolve. Enough's enough. Enough's enough. We really got to do something about it. What to speak of associating with, devotees who are more advanced, those who are freer of this envy, for example. We can pray to the Lord, say, I have this anartha. I realize I have this anartha. It runs really deep. I need your help. You have to help me to eradicate this, That can be a prayer we can offer. Yeah, so those are some thoughts. I mean, there could be many other things, but in general, like that. Anyone else?
Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Krishna Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances.
Hare Krishna.
I was just, occurring to me that the different things like how Krishna is merciful, how so merciful, especially Kaliya, he has offended his devotee, in the beginning, and then on top of it, he was in your Yamuna, and then he was completely spoiling this and making it poisonous. Uh, he's harming all the animals, birds, and like that. And none of the devotees there, they could not even use the water. On top of it, saw personally Krishna himself, and he was trying to attack him even. To that point, like he has done so many things in his life. But when he actually came to the senses and surrendered to the Lord forgave him. And he was so merciful, actually. He put his lotus feet on his head. How merciful he, it really is. And so in spite of all the offenses, but if really, I think, somebody surrenders, and Lord can actually forgive all the offenses and give his mercy. Just amazing to think about that.
Yeah. Yeah. Very nice. Thank you for that. Krishna's unlimited mercy. It's amazing. Even if someone attacks him directly, as Kalia did, beating him on the chest. I mean, can you imagine biting God on the chest? I mean, it doesn't get much, graver than that. That's pretty serious. But still, Krishna was able to give him. I think a key point in this is that the Nagapatnis, right, his wives had prayed on his behalf, which is an important point here. If we have family members, if we have friends, those who are, praying on our behalf, very powerful. Very powerful.
Another thing, unlike the other person that we think about it, like the offenses, the three levels of offenses, comparing that, like the thought of offending someone in the thoughts, or offending in the words, and physically attacking. That's the highest level. And here, Kalia was doing the highest level of offense, directly, hitting the Lord, and in all of that, he got the mercy.
Yeah, amazing, huh? Krishna is unlimitedly merciful. Always prepared. He's prepared to forgive and to forget. And he's very pleased if someone can overcome the anarthas and again engage in his devotional service. And of course, now we've just passed Gora Purnima, where Krishna feels that he has to more easily make himself available when coming as Mahaprabhu and giving the Yuga Dharma and all of that. To give which something which is normally so difficult, give it in a very simple form. Anyone can take advantage. So, yeah, all those things. Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you, Maharaj. Thank you.
Anyone else? Anything else come to mind?
I have a reflection to share.
Sure.
Of course, the Srimad Bhagavatam is littered with examples of what the qualities of devotees are. But you saw in the concern that Mother Yashoda had, and what Nanda Maharaj had, and Lord Balaram, the Lord himself, they're all worried about Krishna. And here I'm worried about, I gotta draft this agreement for at work. I gotta do this. I gotta do that. And sometimes I forget, I have Gauranitai deities here, and I forget to make them offerings. So I forget to do simple things like that I do for myself. So I think that's something that I need to reflect on and improve, of course.
Good. So the pastimes make us reflect on the love that the Brajbasis have for Krishna. It's unlimited. It's unconditional. Krishna's their everything. That's said again and again, that Krishna's their everything. Their whole existence is just, being absorbed in Krishna and Krishna's service. So, of course, we are not the Brajbasis, but we learn from them. We learn We can't imitate them, but we can at least learn from them, some level of commitment. And that's why regulation is so important, because our lives, they pull us in all different ways, and some are so busy with their occupation, with their family, and social obligations, and everything like that. It's certainly not easy to balance all of this at times. But regulation is important. There's that saying that if you fail to plan, you plan to fail, right? And I believe each devotee needs to make a very clear schedule for his or herself, from the time they rise to the time they rest. Where are they going to place their practices of sadhana bhakti? Whatever that level of commitment may be, it should be scheduled. And it helps us because regulation is essential. Otherwise, it's very difficult. If we just leave it to chance or to the hopes that we're going to get it done, it doesn't always happen. So it's important to have a schedule. And the schedule doesn't necessarily have to be fixed in stone. It can be adjusted from time to time, but at least it's a foundation, something you can reflect on and you can refer to, and hopefully it can at least help give a structure for your practice of sadhana and devotional service like this. So when we hear this, we hear about the love that the Brajbasis have. It was unconditional, it was spontaneous. So perhaps that can push us a little bit, to make more of a commitment. And a practical step is to make that schedule and kind of try to refer to it and follow as much as possible. Thank you for that. Someone else?
Yes, Maharaj. I want to reflect on the offense of Saurabhi Muni when he did not allow Garuda to come, at his lake, at this particular lake.
Hare Krishna.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me, Maharaj?
We are able to hear you, Prabhuji.
I don't think he can. I think it froze.
Yeah, Miraj's picture is frozen. It hasn't kicked him off yet, so perhaps there's a chance he'll just automatically reconnect.
Hare Krishna.
Maharaj, back Krishna Prabhu, so repeat your question again, please.
I apologize. I think maybe my connection. Because I'm working on a wireless connection here. Sorry about that. So please.
Okay, Maharaj. I was just reflecting on the offense of Saurabhi Muni, where he did not allow a devotee like Garuda to come under the particular kshetra area where he was living. And because of that offense, he fell down later on in life. And so we have to be very cautious as Vaishnavas if some Vaishnav comes to us, we should be very welcoming instead of, getting rid of them somehow, because that will lead to our own downfall.
Yeah, good. Very good point. It's the first offense, right? To blaspheme the devotees of the Lord. And it's the one that's, I think, easiest for us to commit. There was that saying that familiarity breeds contempt. If we're over familiar with someone, we take liberties with them and we start to see things. We project things on them, and it's just so easy. It's just so easy for us to say something, to someone else or to them like that. So we really have to safeguard against this. And it's mentioned so many times, again and again and again. Prabhupada brings this up in his books and in his lectures as well. Vaishnava aparad will destroy everything. It can destroy everything. I mean, it's the hatimata. It's the mad elephant offense. Here we are, we're trying to, cultivate the creeper of devotion, right? And we unleash the mad elephant. Then what do you expect? The mad elephant tramples through the garden. It's going to uproot the creeper, obviously. It's amazing, really. We've heard it again and again. We read it again and again. We hear Prabhupada say it again and again. We hear senior devotees say it again and again. And so we somehow or another allow ourselves to fall victim to Vaishnava aparad. And if we can just somehow or another muster the necessary humility and determination and the strength to just say, from today, I'm not going to offend any devotees. That will be a huge step forward. Huge step forward. So that's what we need to do. We need to do that. That's another resolution we should take, that from here on out, I don't want to offend any devotees. Easier said than done. Easier said than done. Our conditioned nature is such. Not so easy. But we need to do it. Otherwise, we can't advance. Yeah. Thank you for bringing that point up. Really crucial point. Anyone else?
Yes, Maharaj, you said not to offend any devotees, only devotees or everybody?
Well, ultimately, we're not
Not to offend
supposed to.
anybody, right?
We're not supposed to offend any jiva.
Any
Ultimately.
jiva. Okay.
Ultimately, yes. Ultimately. Yeah. I mean, we have many stories of Prabhupada. He wouldn't even, harm an insect. They'd make all these arrangements that even if there was a mosquito that was bothering him, they would gently get it out of the mosquito net and such things like this. So ultimately, we don't want to cause harm to any living entity. But especially, we should be on guard against committing offenses to devotees.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Welcome. Anyone else?
Well, it seems like because the Nagpatnis prayed for their husband, Kalia, therefore Krishna gave the mercy and he let him go. But we have other one like Dhenukasur and Casey and everyone, they all were killed by Krishna. There was no one praying for them. But of course they went to Vaikuntha. But still, they were, at least Kalia lived because of his wives.
So what does that teach us?
Surround ourselves with devotees who can pray for us.
Yeah. And also that you should be kind to your wife so that you can make sure that she prays for you. And vice versa, of course. That's important. Don't you think so, Nitai Gaurasundara Prabhu?
Yes, Prabhu. Maharaj, that always, it doesn't happen always on my part.
But it's true. We need that support. Whether it's family members, whether it's friends, and a lot of that is based on how we deal with others, how we treat others, if we treat others well, then they'll be favorably inclined towards us, So, yeah, so it is important. It's important. And that's another reason not to offend devotees. If you offend all the devotees, then they'll probably be less inclined to pray on your behalf. Although devotees are unlimitedly merciful and they may do it anyway, but they might be a little bit more inclined if you treat them well. If you're in the mood of service to them. Devotees are, they're very kind and they're very forgiving. But if we're in the mood of service, then I think they'd be a little bit more inclined perhaps to pray on our behalf like that. Anything else? Because our hour is just about up here.
Maharaj, can I ask you one question?
Well, you can. Let's see if I can answer it or not.
Garuda is such an exalted devotee, and he's in association of Vishnu and all the devotees all the time. How come he's looking for fish when he goes underwater?
Well, as it's mentioned there, you know, there's food for allotted foodstuff for every living entity. So the fact that Garuda is in that particular form as a giant bird, you know, his foodstuff is that. His foodstuff is, you know, reptiles and fish and so on and so forth. So what we read in the Bhagavatam, that you know, there is no offense in doing this on his behalf. There's no offense. So he has that form. That's his allotted foodstuff, and that's the way it is. We can't do that. Obviously, we can't do that because that's not our allotted foodstuff. So like this, like that.
That's why Sabri Muni got in trouble.
Yeah,
With
because he was kind of viewing everything with sentiment. It was just because he had developed this friendship with the fish, having been meditating underneath the water for so long. And you know, and he offended Garuda Dev, who was obviously a very exalted personality, the carrier of Lord Vishnu and on everything else. So, you know, he had to pay for it. He had to pay for it. So I think, you know, as we mentioned before about the plan, the written plan, another thing we could do perhaps is to kind of list down. This is an exercise which I've found quite helpful as we discuss with devotees and things like that. You might consider, you know, making a list. You know, I mean, you can make a list of different devotees, or you could just make it general. And you might go through, you know, reflect upon perhaps different offenses that you made to them, or if there are certain services you could have rendered but you did not. If there's some ways that if the relationship's not good, how can we improve the relationship? You know, make it better. Or in general, what can we do for devotees? You know, what services could we render for devotees that we might not be currently rendering at present? It's important because this is practical. This is practical. It has to be practical. We're going to render service, not just lip service to speak about it. It has to be something practical. It's a good exercise, I believe. And it doesn't have to be. I always reflect on this point. Many years ago, I don't even remember how long. It could have been 20 years ago, or even more, something like that. I remember we were in Mayapur, and there was it was a GBC meeting or something, and Burijan Prabhu, I think it was the year he might have been a chairman of the GBC, and long time ago. And so he wanted to give some gifts to all the devotees, and you know, he gave 3 things. I can still remember to this day. It really stuck in my mind, in my consciousness. He gave 3 things. One was a ball of tilak, you know, a big ball of tilak. He gave a Brahmin thread, and that was for the males, and he gave some of them. And then he gave also some, like, maybe it was Tulsi counter beads, you know, for chanting japa. There's 3 things like that. So, you know, it didn't have much monetary value. I mean, what did it cost? A few paisa or something like that. But I still remember it was something that he wanted to offer. According to his means, he offered some little things like that, and it was so wonderful. It was so wonderful that he had thought about the devotees and he offered like that, and everyone received that. I've seen this before, of just the idea of giving gifts to devotees, and that's too what Rupa Goswami says: giving gifts and receiving gifts, offering prasad, receiving prasad. Simple things, really, but very, very powerful. I mean, Rupa Goswami, he's spoken about this, and these 6 loving exchanges. So if we apply them, then it fosters good Vaishnava relationships like this. Yeah, so it's something practical we can reflect on and see, if there's something we're not doing, we could do it, or if there's something that we are doing already, maybe we can improve upon it or expand it in some way. Practical things, rather than think ill of a devotee and mumble and grumble and this and that. Why not I make a plan for, well, so let me serve that devotee in this way or that way. Make a plan for it. And it really makes a huge difference, Another thing that's very powerful, by the way, and maybe you already do this from time to time, but I found that the holding like appreciation, get-togethers is very powerful, where you come together as a group. It can be done online as well, depending on the situation. And one devotee will choose another devotee to appreciate. I appreciate so-and-so, Prabhu or Mataji, because, whatever it might be, a particular quality, a particular service, whatever. And that's very powerful, because then you start appreciating, and you may not think of it so much, but it kind of brings all that to the forefront. You remember, oh, so-and-so devotee, he introduced me, or so-and-so devotee did this or did that or whatever. And it creates such a wonderful atmosphere. When devotees are glorified, wow, it's powerful, very powerful. And, in the context of the Chaitanya Charitamrita, you see the associates of Mahaprabhu, they're very open-hearted and appreciative of another devotee's service. Even the devotee may be younger than they, seemingly younger, not necessarily just in age, but in seniority. Maybe they just come, but they're being, glorified by Mahaprabhu, and everyone else is, very appreciative of this, not thinking, what? This is the new person. I've been around for a much longer time than they. Why are they getting all the appreciation? Why are they in the limelight? I should be there. So that's another thing we see there, that they appreciate the devotion of others, and they appreciate others being glorified like this. It's very liberating, actually, quite liberating. So a big step towards that could be to have appreciation get-togethers. Powerful. You ever do that, Nitai Gaur Sundar Prabhu?
Not yet, Maharaj, but there's something.
We should start. We should start.
Maharaj.
We should start. Yeah. No, it's great. It's great. It works, I'm telling you. It really creates an amazing atmosphere. Because all too often, it may happen that we don't appreciate someone until they actually leave. Till they actually leave this world, as much as we could have, should have, during their physical presence, I saw this when His Holiness Tamal Krishna Goswami departed in Mayapur, and everyone was there, many senior devotees, they all gathered and everything. The next day, after the previous day was put in samadhi, and then This devotee after devotee just said, well, he made me a devotee, or he was my Sankirtan leader, or he was my this or my that, and they had stayed in touch with me, all the years, in various ways like that. So, I didn't know all of that at that time, because there were so many devotees, one after the other, saying that, some of the most senior and most devotees. So rather than wait till the time of someone's departure, then better to do it while they're still here and get the benefit of having appreciated them and hearing so many other devotees appreciating others. Very powerful, very, very powerful. You really gain a greater appreciation for the devotees just in general, like that. Devotee is not an ordinary person. To be a devotee is something very rare. So if we can gain more appreciation, then it will go a long way towards avoiding Vaishnava aparad, I think. If the relationships are good and there's appreciation, if there's a mood of service, much less likely that we'll have misunderstandings and Vaishnava aparad. All right, anyone else? Anything? Let's see. Let me see here.
Just one more thing, Maharaj. I think you mentioned two things, like 101 foods. I know you didn't go through the details, and also the prayers of Nagapatnis. You said you'll have another class. Maybe we can have another session, that you can probably maybe go over more details.
Perhaps. Yeah, perhaps.
I will be here next first Monday of the month. So hold on.
I don't have choice, I guess.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you.
I don't have choice. Nitai, he always makes sure. He sends me many reminders days before, like that, and makes sure that I won't forget. I won't forget. I appreciate that. Manjari, you have anything to say? All we see is your smiling face in that photograph.
No, Raj, I don't have anything. I have a bad cold, so that's why I turned off my camera.
Oh, sorry.
No, Raj,
Sorry.
no, nothing. Wonderful class, Raj. It's really nice to hear you.
Thank you.
Now
Well,
it is time
we
to
pray you get
practice.
better. Time to practice, you said?
Yes, Maharaj. That is-
Yeah, we have to apply now. Have to apply these things, right?
Yes, Maharaj.
Yeah. All right, great. Well, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity. I do appreciate it. And
Thank you, Maharaj. Thank you very much.
yeah, the timing works out. I mean, now either way, because it's 9 a.m. here, 8 p.m. for you, so it does work.
It's 9 p.m. here, Maharaj. 9:12.
Yeah, so it's 10:12 here. So.
Some of our devotees there on Eastern Madhav Prabhu and Shiva Radha Vallabh Prabhu, they are in Eastern time zone, so they're 10, 12 now. Isn't it? Yeah. They're ahead of us there.
Well, thank you all. Thank you all for joining. And Krishna willing, we'll be back in a month or so. And one thing is, maybe you can appeal if there's a particular topic that you want to speak about. I could speak on that particular topic, whatever it might be. What would be beneficial for the group, anything like that. Let me know. I could do that.
My opinion, Maharaj, this was very beneficial.
Sorry again, I missed it.
I think it was very beneficial as far as I'm concerned, personally. Very beneficial. I don't know what everybody else thinks, but Madhav Prabhu, you have some comment?
Yes. Hare Krishna Maharaj, Dandavat Pranam, and all the devotees. I just, after listening all these various questions and answers, one thing came very clear again, going back to the original question of Nitai Gaurasundar Prabhu, that how we all know that envy, how to get rid of, but actually you answer very elaborately in a way that I know that something bad to get rid of, we simply by thinking in our mind, we cannot do it. It must be replaced by like loving thing. So you simply get rid of a negative thing is not possible. Simply it has to be replaced by something just the opposite character. And that's what we described very nicely with so many examples. Let us do appreciation. Let us do so many activities, so exchange between the devotees. And that is the way to get rid of envy, because simply thinking in my mind how to get rid, I know, I accept I have envy, but then I can keep thinking forever, entire life. It will never go away. I must replace it by some activity. Only that is the only way it can be, I can get rid of, because simply thinking will never ever do it. So it must be replacement. Like good has to be replaced by bad thing. Bad has to be replaced by good thing. Only then it can take place and change can happen. Not simply by meditating. We can meditate forever. We'll never get rid of envy. Never. That's what I wanted to share with you.
Thank you. Well said. Well said. So yeah.
Thank you, Maharaj.
You know, there's an example, like if you have a bottle of ink and you want to get all the black out, well, you can certainly turn the bottle upside down and you know, a lot of the ink will come out, but there'll always be some coating the sides. But if you want to actually get all of the ink out, then you have to pour in a white substance and keep pouring till the white then replaces the black. So in the same way, you know, in our process of Krishna consciousness, we're trying to pour in Krishna in various forms. And as we keep pouring and then it replaces what's there, the unwanted things are removed. So I think that was quite nice what you said. That is true. And in the context of Vaishnava Aparad, you know, if we can just have appreciation for the devotees and facilitate those kind of gatherings and like that, you know, that will go a long way towards removing the unwanted things like that. We have to replace it. We have to replace it. We have to replace envy with, you know, the mood of loving exchange, appreciation, service, you know, like that. Yeah. All right. I'm going to leave you with that. Thank you so much. And Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Samveta Bhaktavrinda ki jai, Nitai Gaur Premanandi, Hari Hari Bol.
Hare Krishna.
Hare
Thank you.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
So
Take
just
care, everyone. Take
Thank
care.
you, Maharaj.
Thank you, Maharaj. Hare
Thank
Krishna.
you. Hare Krishna.
Hari Bol, Hari Bol.
So just a quick reminder that tomorrow's program starts at 7:45. So let's go ahead and unmute ourselves and we'll recite the Vaishnava Pranam prayer and be on our way.
Vanchakalpadrupayasha kripa sindhavaya Etanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah.
Vaishnavebhyo namo
Hare
namah.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare
Thank
Krishna.
you.
Hare Krishna.